ripping the roofs and siding off of several homes, only leaving behind the walls and the foundation. Our storm chasing partner sharing this video right here showing a car flipped on the highway, and they say that tornado picked up massive debris as it crossed over the interstate, including cars, truck trailers, even large trees. Cleanup efforts are just getting started tonight there as crews clear the way to those hardest hit areas. But we want to turn to another area of concern now. A monster tornado touching down in southeast Iowa tonight. Forecasters estimating it was at least a mile wide. Some tornadoes from the system have been moving as fast as 60 miles per hour, only giving people there a few minutes to get in and take cover. And this severe weather threat will last well into the night tonight, moving east. The areas you see in yellow here are still under that particularly dangerous situation tornado watch, which means any tornadoes that do happen could be violent and a long track.
And hours before this new round of severe storms, President Biden and the First Lady got an up-close look at the devastation from a deadly tornado last weekend. They surveyed the damage in Rolling Fork, Mississippi today and met with families impacted by the storm. Biden says the visit is to remind everyone to remain hopeful and show support as they pick up the pieces.
The most important thing is we got to let people know there's reason for them to have hope, because this is, especially the people who lost somebody. We've been in a bunch of these together. This is tough stuff.
The federal government will cover the full cost of debris removal, operating shelters, and overtime for first responders for 30 days. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is opening disaster recovery centers in 4 Mississippi counties as well. Developing now, former President Donald Trump is preparing for a voluntary surrender and arraignment next week. Trump will fly from Florida to New York on Monday before appearing in a specially secured Manhattan courthouse Tuesday. It comes after he was indicted on criminal charges for his role in organizing hush money payments made to an adult film star during his 2016 campaign. That court appearance is expected at 2:15 in the afternoon. Trump's attorney is saying much of what will happen is still unknown, but he does not expect Trump to be put in handcuffs. The former president will be arraigned on unspecified criminal charges. He is expected to be released after next week's arraignment, since the indictment does not include violent felony charges. Former President Trump is attacking the judge assigned to his case, posting on Truth Social that the judge, quote, hates me, claiming that he was handpicked by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Not clear where Trump's information is coming from. Trump and his supporters call this a political prosecution, trying to discredit the district attorney who oversaw the grand jury's decision. The National Desk chief political correspondent Scott Thuman looking at the controversy surrounding this case.
How many charges are there?
If the weight of the political world is taking a toll on Alvin Bragg, he's not showing it. Mostly because he's not saying much of anything, despite being the first ever district attorney to criminally charge a former president. But legal experts say quieting the critics will be tough.
And he has to prove that this is not a political indictment, so it better be a slam dunk case.
Famed defense attorney Alan Dershowitz accuses Bragg and his team of picking the target and then finding the crime.
Bragg has to prove that what Trump should have done after paying hush money, he should have made a public statement on his corporate record saying the reason I paid the $130,000 was to keep a former porn star quiet about an adulterous affair. Nobody in history has ever made that kind of disclosure, and nobody in history has ever been indicted for not making that disclosure.
Although a new statement from Bragg's office Friday tries to dispel any assertions that politics are involved as baseless and inflammatory. Going after Trump was a topic during Bragg's 2021 race for office. In fact, the New York Times then indicated success could depend on who is willing to charge Trump with a criminal case. Along with Trump, staunch Republicans have long decried Bragg as a George Soros-backed prosecutor, alleging the progressive billionaire got him elected. Soros says, I don't know him, and his spokesman says Soros only donated to a supportive political action committee.
I can tell you this, Scott, when I was United States Attorney, if you bring a case, you put all your cards on the table. He needs to talk to the American people, not just the people in Manhattan, but to the American people, explain why he's brought these charges, what the basis of it is, and he needs to do that every step of the way. But by not speaking to the American public, there's going to be more and more accusations of this is political.
Now, here on the Hill, Republicans still trying to subpoena Bragg, bring him here to Congress to testify and answer questions about his motivations. His office dismisses that desire as also, quote, playing politics.
Scott, seems like all of the reaction that we've been seeing was somewhat predictable. Do you believe the political reaction will calm a bit, or do you think that will intensify?
Well, there are certainly some calls for calm, but that doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen. And we've also seen some indicators that it could be amped up. For example, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been a vocal ally of former President Trump, has said she plans to be in New York Tuesday to join the protesters. We'll see how this weekend plans out, but I would guess that we're going to hear some increasing tensions.
We will see. Scott Thuman reporting tonight from the Capitol. Thank you. Tonight, some lawmakers are staying silent. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has said nothing about Trump's indictment. Neither has Senator John Thune, the number 2 Republican in the Senate. Here's how President Biden is addressing the topic.
Further divide our country, the indictment?
I have no comment on that.
Mr. President.
Possible protests in the wake of the indictment?
No, I'm not going to talk about Trump's indictment.
Many Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi and Senator Elizabeth Warren, are saying that no one is above the law.
We can't allow something like this to happen. This is just a travesty of justice.
I think it's wrong. I think it's going to hurt the country in general.
Our crew on the ground near Mar-a-Lago talking to Trump supporters. They tell us they are eager to show they are not giving up on the former president and disapprove of the criminal charges. Police are stepping up security in New York, preparing for possible protests following Trump's indictment. One person we know will be there, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Georgia representative, tweeting today she plans on traveling to New York City on Tuesday. We're getting a look at the efforts underway outside the Manhattan courthouse. Law enforcement officials say authorities are monitoring social media and assessing threats that are being posted against the parties involved. New tonight, a final farewell. Family and friends gathering today for the funeral of Nashville school shooting victim Evelyn Dickhouse. She was just 9 years old. They were asked to wear pink and bright spring colors as opposed to black. The pastor saying the family is overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support they have received. They said it has been comforting and uplifting for all of us. Also new tonight, President Biden is taking a strong stance, urging Russia to release Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich.
What's your message to Russia right now as they're detaining this Wall Street Journal reporter?
Let him go.
Gershkovich was arrested on espionage charges, allegations the newspaper denies. Russia's Federal Security Service is accusing him of trying to obtain classified information. This is the first time an American journalist has been detained in Russia on accusations of spying since the Cold War. With the fentanyl crisis killing thousands upon thousands of Americans each year, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas now saying fentanyl is the single greatest challenge the U.S. faces. Janae Bowens joining us now with why critics say Mayorkas isn't doing enough, Janae, to address the issue.
Yeah, Dee, Secretary Mayorkas made that statement earlier this week during a Senate hearing. Now, many are pegging this as the first time a member of Biden's cabinet has described fentanyl in this way. Now, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid drug that is up to 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. Fentanyl-laced fake prescription pills are being disguised as Percocet and Xanax. Mexico is the primary source for fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances trafficked into the U.S. Now, according to the CDC, there were over 100,000 drug overdose deaths during a 12-month period ending in April 2021. The majority of those were caused by opioids. Now, I spoke with Laura Reese with the Heritage Foundation. She says Secretary Mayorkas did not capture the full scope of the fentanyl issue.
He is grossly under-describing the problem. Getting Secretary of Homeland Security to answer a hearing question is a challenge. Killing 100,000 Americans is a crisis. It's reasonable to call it a public health emergency. But he's downplaying it because it involves the very open border and the policies that he's overseeing and the terrible results from that.
Now, Mayorkas says the Department of Homeland Security is attacking like never before, with the arrest of more than 9,100 smugglers and the disruption of over 9,000 humans struggling operations last year. Now, he says the efforts have led to the seizure of record amounts of fentanyl at our ports of entry. But conservatives say the country needs tougher immigration laws to secure the border and stop the flow of drugs. Senator John Cornyn even told Secretary Mayorkas he should be fired. Now, we should note the FDA just approved the first over-the-counter Narcan nasal spray. The medication reverses the effects of opioid overdose, and many are hoping this will help save lives.
Artificial intelligence, or AI, is a broad category of tech that can mimic human intelligence, but one of the newest forms of it is called ChatGPT. I'm with the fact check team, and Courtney, today Italy actually temporarily banned ChatGPT over privacy concerns. Let's start with the basics. So how does this work?
So it's a form of artificial intelligence that was created by the company OpenAI. Simply put, it's an online tool that gives you conversational answers to detailed questions in a matter of seconds.
And can anyone use it?
Yes, anyone can use it, and it's free. All you have to do is go to the GPT website, type in your question, and press enter.
And it has several capabilities. Connor, we were talking about this earlier. What else can it do?
Yeah, it can do so much. For instance, it can code, write resumes and cover letters, and if you give it certain prompts, it can write you stories, jokes, and even essays for school, which has caused some issues between teachers and students. Now, this is what really got me. I found out that ChatGPT not only passed the bar exam, but it also ranked in the top 10% of test takers. I had to prepare for months to take that test, so it's going to be interesting to see just how this will impact lawyers in the future. Will it be a useful tool or threaten jobs, or maybe a little bit of both?
And experts say like the legal profession, as he talked about, is just one area that could be impacted by this technology. So later in the show, the fact check team is going to investigate how ChatGPT could impact other jobs.
Well, new tonight, the Army now releasing the names and photos of the 9 soldiers killed during a training mission. What we are now learning as investigators try to figure out what exactly caused those helicopters to crash.
As we had to break a live look over Seattle from our station Como, part of our network of 4,000 local journalists. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
Breaking tonight at the live desk, less than 2 hours before it was set to go into effect, a federal judge has blocked a Tennessee law that would criminalize some drag shows, saying it violates freedom of speech. The first of its kind law would ban the shows on public property or anywhere it could be seen by a minor. Hours ago, the Army identifying the 9 soldiers killed when 2 Black Hawk helicopters crashed near Fort Campbell, Kentucky. You see their names listed on the screen here, all of them between the ages of 23 and 36. Loved ones also tonight sharing photos with us here. The group was from 7 different states across the country and served in the 101st Airborne Division. Tonight, their commanding general releasing a statement in part saying the loss of these soldiers will reverberate through our formations for years to come. Now tonight, a special military team is still on the ground there trying to figure out what exactly caused that crash during a nighttime training exercise. Blackhawks have a data collection system similar to a black box on passenger planes. Investigators are hoping that it will give them some clues about what happened there in the moments before that crash.
The National Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, starting in Texas, where survivors of violence and families of victims rallied at the state capitol to advocate for more victim support and policies to end the cycle of crime.
Inside the Capitol, hundreds gather as upbeat music fills the rotunda. But there's a somber reason behind their visit.
Now please join me in a moment of silence.
That silence broken by the names of loved ones who are victims of violence. Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice is uniting families and survivors to bring attention to lawmakers.
I light this candle for all survivors of domestic violence.
One person speaking out is Sinclair Horde. Her nephew was shot and killed 5 years ago. He was 19 years old.
We pay tribute to him every year. We love him. We still miss him. I have his picture right next to my bed.
She's one of the many today supporting Senate Bill 49 and House Bill 250 relating to crime victims' compensation by establishing a one-time assistance payment for relocation expenses. She also supports House Bill 1737, which relates to record sealing for certain misdemeanor defendants. That bill passed out of committee in a 9-0 vote, showing support from Republican and Democratic lawmakers on the committee.
It is a big deal for us because we don't want people to go back to doing crime because they can't work or they can't find housing or they feel hopeless.
Sinclair hopes lawmakers listen to the voices sharing their stories today.
When survivors speak.
Now over to Oregon. State lawmakers are discussing ways to better protect students in the event of an active shooter. Lawmakers on both sides expressed support for a bill that would direct the state's Department of Education to study the feasibility of bringing the Salem-Kaiser Threat Assessment Program to all Oregon school districts. The program teaches people how to identify threatening behaviors and intervene before violence happens.
If there had been that early and often intervention, we may have had different outcomes.
The sponsor of the bill requested it be combined with 2 other school safety bills. One would direct the Department of Education to identify cost and funding sources to improve school safety. The other would identify a secure point of entry for each school. In Washington, the Seattle Aquarium has teamed up with more than 70 organizations and 44 aquariums to reintroduce baby sharks back into the ocean. The ReShark program is breeding baby zebra sharks in an effort to boost population numbers, which are low due to over-harvesting, according to experts. The shark eggs arrived in Seattle from Las Vegas to prepare for their journey to Indonesia, where they were cared for until they were ready to be released into the water.
To see them swim out healthy into a marine protected area in northern Raja Ampat was overwhelmingly filled me with hope. And if we can do it with this species, we can do it with others.
The ReShark program hopes to release 500 baby zebra sharks into the wild over the next several years.
Tonight, the Department of Justice announcing new action against Norfolk Southern months after its toxic train derailment. Why they say the company violated federal law. Coming up next.
Pope Francis is spending what is expected to be his last night in the hospital. The Vatican says Pope Francis will leave tomorrow. He was hospitalized on Wednesday after experiencing breathing problems. The 86-year-old was later diagnosed with bronchitis and treated with antibiotics.
Taking you live tonight over Washington, D.C., where the Justice Department has now filed a civil lawsuit against Norfolk Southern after its fiery train derailment. Now, they say the company violated the Clean Water Act in East Palestine, Ohio. They now are seeking civil penalties to make sure the rail company will cover the cost of cleanup there. The derailment and subsequent explosion releasing poisonous chemicals and fumes into nearby communities there. And the CDC is now confirming that 7 of its employees sent to the area to study health impacts became sick. They reported sore throats, headaches, and nausea, similar to what many of the people in East Palestine experienced. The CDC now saying the symptoms cleared out within 24 hours.
There is growing support tonight for banning TikTok among Capitol Hill lawmakers, but many disagree on the right way to go about it. The National Desk, Kayla Gaskins explains.
When addressing concerns over TikTok,
be under no illusion, this is a weapon.
Some lawmakers fighting to ensure the solution isn't worse than the problem.
Use fear to coax Americans.
Senator Rand Paul shooting down fellow Republican Josh Hawley's bill to ban TikTok over First Amendment concerns.
Speech is protected whether you like it or not.
Paul then going after the Bipartisan Restrict Act, pointing out the bill's broad, vague language opens the door for unintended consequences that could infringe on Americans' constitutional rights.
This is a crazy gift of power to one person. And I don't care which party they're in, it's a huge mistake.
Business Insider quoting Republican Senator J.D. Vance, equating the bill to a Patriot Act for the digital age. Vance's comparison referring to the post-9/11 law, created for the purpose of combating future terror attacks, but in reality, it granted the government vast surveillance powers the feds used to spy on Americans. Critics like Senator Paul arguing the Restrict Act could have similar unintended consequences, endangering First Amendment rights.
Do you want Joe Biden to be your censor? It would basically be a limitless authority for the president to ban speech.
One of the bill's sponsors, Senator Mark Warner, firing back.
I categorically reject that. The bill is clear that, the Secretary of Commerce would have to prove with data, with information, that there is a systemic risk from any of these applications.
Warner pointing out the Restrict Act targets companies, not individuals. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins for the National Desk, America's News Now.
It has been a troubling year for air travel. The FAA just announcing a $1 billion contract to make technology improvements. Where that money is going, they say, to avoid future flight frustrations. Next, right here at the Live Desk. Here at the Live Desk tonight, we start with a split screen, a live look over Chicago Midway International Airport, as well as Washington, D.C., where the FAA is set to issue a multi-billion-dollar contract to improve technology impacting those airports nationwide. Now, that contract is going to Verizon, and it's worth up to $2.4 billion. Officials say much of that money will go to much-needed upgrades to the agency's technology systems, including air traffic management of up to 45,000 flights per day. And it comes nearly 3 months after a critical alert system failed, halting departing flights nationwide, the country's first nationwide ground stop since 9/11. Thousands of flights were delayed or canceled that day.
Coming up here on the National Desk, breaking news, a terrifying night in parts of the South where tornadoes have been spotted, and we're going to show you the damage left behind. And later on, a salmonella source, why the CDC is urging people not to eat or play with uncooked dough or batter. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
Live from the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and breaking news, Mother Nature turning violent. A deadly tornado outbreak tearing through several states, including Arkansas. New pictures out of Little Rock tonight showing the extent of some of the damage. Rooftops, smashed trees and power lines, they were down, some tossed into roads. Ryan Smith at the Live Desk with powerful new video of the tornado.
And we start with more breaking news tonight. New details in a story we first told you about at the start of the newscast. We've now learned one person has died, 28 are hurt after a roof collapsed during a concert in Illinois. It happened in Belvidere, Illinois, about an hour west of Chicago. Still a very active scene out there. We will, of course, be here to keep you updated as we learn more. Also, some incredible new images coming out of the devastation in Arkansas tonight. Our storm-chasing partners capturing this drone video out of Wynne, Arkansas, where we've now learned 2 people were killed in a violent tornado. You can see a clear path of destruction here. Debris from houses scattered alongside large trees ripped right up out of the ground. The mayor saying tonight the tornado cut straight across the city limits. Tonight, Arkansas remains under a state of emergency after those 2 violent tornadoes. Over the last hour, the governor saying she has now spoken with the FEMA director to get aid to her state as quickly as possible. First responders are in Little Rock going door to door tonight to make sure everyone is accounted for. Dozens of people are in the hospital for storm-related injuries. 5 of them, we've learned, are critical. The Storm Prediction Center just releasing preliminary numbers on this tornado outbreak. Illinois reporting the most tonight with 16 tornadoes. This right here, brand new video of the damage in that state from our station in Springfield. They also saw baseball-sized hail. These cars right here caught up in that storm. Well, it looks like they were hit with a bat. Many of them were so badly damaged they had to be towed away. Turning to live radar now, the severe weather threat will remain in place overnight with this particularly dangerous situation. Tornado watch still in effect for nearly a dozen states.
All right, Ryan, and tonight we are getting a closer look at the tornado damage in Arkansas. The National Desk Desmond Nugent reports from Little Rock.
It's a sound all too familiar to Arkansans. But this time it left homes, a Kroger grocery store, and businesses destroyed.
But it occurred to me a moment ago that we don't have a job, and that's nothing compared to what people have lost so much.
Annette Blanton is a manager at Rock City Running. She says 10 people, including customers, were inside when the tornado hit.
Everything was gone. We walked into our neighbor's business because there was no wall between us anymore.
Joanna McFadden was just a few doors down at Love Nails. She says employees and customers ran to the back to take cover.
It was about 20 to 25 of us. We ran to the back area, closed the door, huddled together, and just prayed for our lives. I'm surprised I didn't get hurt. No one was injured that was in there with me. Nothing fell on us, nothing hit us. We were all perfectly fine.
While McFadden says she's never witnessed anything like this before, Blanton is just trying to figure out what to do next.
That's what's so terrifying. I don't know where we go from here. I don't even know how I'm going to get home. My car is destroyed. It's boxed in.
Just terrible. Desmond Nugent reporting from Little Rock, Arkansas. Of course, we will bring you updates on the severe weather system on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. Developing now, former President Donald Trump is expected to travel to New York City on Monday ahead of his arraignment on Tuesday. A grand jury voted to indict Trump on criminal charges for his role in hush money payments made to an adult film star. The indictment remains under seal, but CNN reports he faces more than 30 counts related to business fraud, and there may be more to come. Several outlets reporting Manhattan's district attorney had asked questions about a hush money payment to a second woman who claimed she had an affair with Trump. The indictment met with mixed reaction.
There's a lot more at stake here than the fate of Donald Trump. This is, I think, an affirmation of the principle that no one is above the law. That the law should apply equally.
It's clear to the overwhelming majority of the American people that this is nothing short of a political prosecution.
Trump, who's in the middle of a presidential bid, denies both affairs. Former Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz weighed in on the Trump indictment this morning on the National Desk. He says the case should be moved out of New York City.
There's no possibility he can get a fair trial in Manhattan, a borough that went, over 80, close to 90% against Trump. The case has to be moved to a place like Staten Island or upstate New York.
And you can watch the full interview with Alan Dershowitz on our website, thenationaldesk.com. Taking a look at your money, the Federal Reserve's favorite measure of inflation shows Americans saw slight relief from high prices in February, but inflation is still more than twice as high as the Fed's targeted rate. The National Desk, Audra Al-Nashar, has a closer look.
A sigh of relief coming with the release of a closely watched gauge of inflation out Friday. After an unexpected spike in January, February's personal consumption expenditures price index fell to 5% year over year.
1 month of move in a kind of more helpful direction is not something that really indicates a sustained change. We still do have more work to do and more to see to know that inflation is really on a sustained downward path.
A sustained and steady slowdown to what economists call a soft landing instead of a crash or recession. It's a best case scenario not everyone is convinced can happen. Consumers increasingly expect a recession ahead, according to an updated University of Michigan survey.
We haven't learned anything new about the macroeconomy that's particularly reassuring in the last 3.5 weeks.
A new Quinnipiac poll shows adults' top financial concern is food costs, followed by retirement savings and healthcare costs. Another indicator suggesting the economy is cooling, weekly jobless claims up by 7,000 from the prior week, a measure that's been trending higher over the past 2 months. One of the biggest questions economists have now is how much will the shock from the 2 recent bank failures exacerbate the Federal Reserve's engineered slowdown? For example, will employers be more conservative in their hiring if they're worried about instability? Consumers, executives, monetary policymakers hoping the worst is over, but cautiously watching for any sign of another incoming shock to the system. In Washington, I'm Atral Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
New details. Minneapolis is revamping its policing nearly 3 years after an officer murdered George Floyd. The city council approving an agreement today with the state outlining new requirements for use of force, stops, searches and arrests, body cameras, training, responses to mental health and officer wellness. An independent party will monitor compliance. Minnesota's Department of Human Rights determined last year that the department engaged in a pattern of discrimination for at least a decade. The U.S. Justice Department is still investigating. The World Health Organization is revising its previous COVID-19 vaccine recommendations, now saying healthy kids and teenagers may not need a shot. The change is meant to prioritize shots for people at the highest risk of hospitalization or death from the virus. The guidance is also thanks to high population immunity from both vaccines and infection. Right now, it's the age-old Washington problem. The approval rating for Congress often hovers below 30%, and yet the same people are repeatedly reelected. Some on Capitol Hill say it's time to change that, breathing new life into the old debate on term limits. The National Desk, Christine Frizzell, has the latest.
Let me put it this way.
They are some of the most powerful lawmakers on Capitol Hill. And their combined age, 323 years, is not the problem.
We've been here longer.
Their combined years of service, 160 years, is, for some, calling for change.
Enmeshed in backroom deals and broken promises, our Capitol has too often become a political playground for the powerful and the well-connected.
For years, Senator Ted Cruz has been calling for term limits. Now he, along with Congressman Ralph Norman, has proposed a constitutional amendment to limit the number of terms members of Congress may serve, 3 two-year terms for members of the House and 2 six-year terms for the Senate, though Cruz himself is currently running for a 3rd term.
I've introduced a constitutional amendment to put that into the Constitution.
But you're still running.
And if and when it passes, I will happily comply. I've never said I'm going to unilaterally comply.
Supporters say it's long overdue, despite a similar bill supported by the public failing back in 1995.
I support term limits. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't participate. The majority of folks just don't participate in those critical midterm elections and primaries.
Many Democrats, though, oppose the plan. They say for one simple reason: experience matters.
I've gone through the economic collapse of 2008. So as people are talking about recession now, many of us are talking about what we did and to get out of it.
Government is very complex. The only people that know what's going on under term limits are the lobbyists and your paid staff.
Why do you think term limits, though, is so popular with voters?
Because it rings well, throw the bums out.
Others say term limits already exist in a sense, allowing voters to decide. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Twitter CEO Elon Musk requested to meet with the chair of the Federal Trade Commission amid an ongoing investigation into the platform's handling of user data. That's according to the New York Times, which noted the meeting was declined and Musk's lawyer was told to focus instead on complying with investigators. This comes as the FTC intensifies its investigation into whether Twitter has the resources to protect user data after Musk laid off thousands of employees. Other issues are coming under the microscope as well, including recent reports of Twitter getting hacked and 200 million user emails leaked. Phase-out plan approved. The popular vehicles estate is targeting to cut down on emissions. Then, a record rate of young, unmarried Americans moving in together, the main factor fueling the trend.
Plus, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis now poised to sign permitless carry into law. How the controversial move plays into a growing trend of rolling back gun restrictions nationwide. Those details ahead in 90 seconds.
And taking a live look over Cincinnati from our station WKRC, part of our network of 4,000 local journalists. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
Take you out live tonight to Tampa, Florida. The Sunshine State now poised to roll back some gun restrictions. The state's Republican-controlled legislature passing a bill allowing people to carry concealed loaded weapons anywhere without a permit. Governor Ron DeSantis promising to sign that into law next week, making Florida the 26th state to allow permitless carry. Now, under the new law, people would need to have only a valid ID on them while carrying concealed weapons. Current law requires residents to undergo training, clear a background check, and pay fees when applying for a concealed carry license. Now, that will be no more. Multiple states are now moving forward towards making gun laws even more lax, including Tennessee, where 6 people were killed in a school shooting on Monday. Lawmakers there want to roll back age restrictions for those gun purchases.
New tonight, the Biden administration approved California's plan to phase out a wide range of diesel trucks. Starting next year, the decision from the Environmental Protection Agency allows the state to require truck manufacturers sell more zero-emission heavy-duty trucks. California looking to drastically cut down on emissions and improve air quality. Governor Gavin Newsom has already moved to ban the sale of new gasoline-powered cars by 2035. Those rules are still awaiting EPA approval. According to Goldman Sachs, as many as 300 million jobs could be affected by new additions of AI like ChatGPT. I am back with the fact-check team. And Courtney, there are concerns artificial intelligence could reshape the labor market. Explain.
Right, Didi. People are starting to worry. According to a ZipRecruiter survey, 62% of job seekers said they're worried that artificial intelligence like ChatGPT could replace their jobs. The survey broke up the results by age group, and if you take a look at your screens, you'll see that the concern is highest among the youngest job seekers and those with the least education.
And according to a Goldman Sachs economist, which jobs could be the most affected?
So economists said that administrative workers, lawyers, and engineers are some of the jobs expected to be the most affected compared to jobs like construction or repair work. But they did provide a silver lining. They said that technology that initially displaces workers has historically also created job growth over time, and that AI could boost global GDP by as much as 7%.
And economists predict that this won't just be here in the U.S. I mean, it'll be on a global scale, right, Connor?
That's right, Didi. They believe that Hong Kong, Israel, Japan, Sweden, and the U.S. will be the top 5 most effective countries. Meanwhile, China, Nigeria, Vietnam, Kenya, and India will be the least. But while data shows AI will impact the labor market, it's still not clear how much of one it really will have.
And with all this considered, there have been calls to actually pause the development of these systems.
That's right. And we looked through this open letter signed by Elon Musk and a bunch of other tech leaders and academics. They called on AI labs to pause the development of systems that are able to compete with human-level intelligence for at least 6 months, because they say these systems pose a profound risk to society and humanity, and that if a pause can't happen quickly, government should step in.
And it is incredible how quickly this is all progressing. The Fact Check team is going to continue to follow developments on this and other issues. You can scan that QR code on your screen to read this story with links to where they found their information, or visit our website, thenationaldesk.com. Right now, Italy is temporarily banning ChatGPT over privacy concerns. Italy's data protection agency says it's investigating a possible violation of European Union data protection rules. The agency says it needs more information on how OpenAI, the U.S. company behind it, ChatGPT, collects and uses data. OpenAI now has 20 days to report what measures it will take to comply with Italy's data rules or face a $22 million fine.
The CDC now warning tonight about a salmonella outbreak spanning nearly a dozen states. The unlikely source next, right here at the Live Desk. A live look tonight over Atlanta, Georgia, home to CDC headquarters. The agency just issuing a salmonella outbreak warning linked to flour. Now, usually this type of warning is for eggs, not flour, but tonight we've learned a dozen people have gotten sick from this. At least 3 of them had to go to the hospital. And this warning affects millions of people. The outbreak now spanning 11 states. Investigators are now working to identify which brands are included in this. The CDC now warning that any unbaked flour can have germs in it like salmonella, and that you should not eat raw dough or batter. It's even warning tonight against homemade Play-Doh using raw flour. The CDC says to use heat-treated flour instead.
New tonight, many Gen Z couples are saying I don't to getting married and yes to living together. The National Desk's Angela Brown details why we're seeing an increase in this trend.
Younger, unmarried couples are moving in together at higher rates. A new report says more than 11% of Americans aged 18 to 24 lived with a romantic partner who's not a spouse last year. That's about 3.2 million people. One major reason? High rent. After 2 years together, Lauren and Patty made the leap, moving to Philly in a 4-bedroom house that they are sharing with 2 friends, another couple, cohabitating for the sake of love, proximity, and money.
Even though it's a 4-bedroom and we're splitting rent between the 4 of us evenly, it's way cheaper than any other living arrangement I could find.
A Realtor.com survey found that 80% of Gen Z couples cite money as a main factor behind living together, which allows 1 in 4 respondents to save more than $1,000 a month. Lauren and Patty face Philly rent hikes and rising grocery bills.
We do share groceries and stuff like that, which is like a huge expense right now.
Inflation playing a major role. Food prices up 9.5% from last February. Energy costs increasing over 5% year over year.
With inflation in terms of like the price of goods and groceries and stuff like that, it's just so nice living, even if it was just a significant other, but also living with another couple it's not you taking that full burden.
Lauren and Patty just renewed the lease on their house, planning to stay another year before finding a place for the two of them. They say the move has only strengthened their relationship.
I feel like it was a decent leap to take in terms of living together. I feel like a big jump. And it's been honestly nothing but good. I feel like we've gotten better in all aspects of our relationship, like communication.
In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
A lot of excitement tonight. Final Four weekend underway. Who is now advancing to the championship from the women's side? Plus, will South Carolina make history tonight? The answer in 90 seconds. The Final Four weekend is here, kicking off in Dallas tonight. On the women's side, LSU making history, advancing to its first ever championship game, defeating Virginia Tech tonight. And some breaking news in the sports world. Moments ago, Iowa defeating the reigning women's champs, South Carolina. Sunday's championship matchup now is officially Iowa versus LSU. And that means we see more of the NCAA Player of the Year right here. Superstar standout Caitlin Clark, who put up a record-breaking 40-point triple-double last weekend, and tonight she topped it once again with 41 points. Now, ticket demand for the women's Final Four, it's never been higher. A leading ticketing technology company finding prices on the secondary market shot up 120% compared to last year. Here's the lineup on the men's side for tomorrow. It's a battle of the coasts. Florida Atlantic versus San Diego State at 6:09. Then the only team with Final Four experience, UConn, takes on Miami at 8:49.
New tonight, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice announcing that a waterfall in Babcock State Park has been named after his English bulldog, Baby Dog. Baby Dog isn't unknown to West Virginians. Justice frequently brings her to public appearances. She even served as the mascot of the vaccine during the pandemic to encourage residents to get vaccinated. Very cute, and we leave you with that. That's going to do it for us. The conversation picks up online and on air Monday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern. Before we go, here's one last look at America's news and weather now where you live. Good night.
We're watching three separate systems. The first one brings some snow up towards northern New England, some showers down towards southern New England overnight tonight. And then by the time we get to tomorrow morning, we're looking at a round of rain. Could be on the moderate to heavy side throughout much of the region. And then a cold front passes through the state. And few of these storms could be severe by the time we get to Saturday evening. So, of course, we have to watch that. Saturday temperatures, very mild down to the south, much cooler up towards New Hampshire and Maine.
I'm meteorologist Jasmine Lomax with a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Overnight, rain will move across the region. At times, this rain could be heavy. This is how we start Saturday morning for areas east of the cold front. Once the cold front passes, most of us dry out briefly, and then another cold front arrives, leading to the chance for rain and possibly severe weather for northern parts of the region. Temperatures drop to the 40s, 50s, and 60s before rising by the afternoon.
I'm meteorologist Marshall McPeak. An enormous low-pressure center spinning through the upper Midwest is creating all kinds of severe weather up and down the Mississippi River Valley. And we will still see storms during the night tonight across a lot of the Ohio and Mississippi River valleys. Up to the north, Minneapolis with some very gusty winds and some snow. Snow continues on Saturday through parts of the UP and across the upper Great Lakes. Showers and thunderstorms with very gusty winds through Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois.
Good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Kristen Clark as we track the weather makers across the West to kick off April on Saturday. There will be an approaching front into the Intermountain West. In its wake, a few isolated thunderstorms across parts of Washington State and Idaho, but also heavy snow impacting cross-Cascade travel there in parts of Washington and also Oregon. Unseasonably cool to kick off the month, too, with Seattle staying in the mid-40s, but sunshine across the Four Corners and in L.A. That's all the weather from here.
Hi, meteorologist Chris Succi. Look at our forecast across the region. We continue to track heavy storms moving through East Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas out of the region overnight. And that'll clear the way to what will be a much calmer, nicer Saturday to enjoy for the weekend. Starts off a little cool, crisp in some cases, 30s and 40s, 50s for morning lows. Afternoon temperatures, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then on Sunday, looking at a mix of clouds and sun, a few storms, Oklahoma and Arkansas.
Good evening to you. I'm meteorologist Michael Ehrenberg, and here's a look at your southeast regional forecast. For the overnight, we see a weak cool front moving through northern Georgia, western North Carolina, stretching down to the Louisiana coastal areas, bringing with it some spotty showers and thunderstorms, while it remains fair for areas further south. Overnight low temperatures will drop down into the upper 50s behind the front in areas like Nashville, 60s for most everywhere else. We're looking for